Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is directed by Peyton Reed and stars Paul Rudd, Evangeline Lilly, Jonathan Majors, among others. And this is the 31st film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And in this story, it deals with Ant-Man and the Wasp, who, along with Ant-Man's daughter Cassie, essentially end up, and also Hank and Janet all get sucked into the quantum realm, and they essentially have to escape from it, and they encounter a new villain of the series named King the Conqueror, who wants to essentially escape and cause total devastation. And it's pretty straightforward from there, and there's some other things I can't really get into detail without spoiling, but that's pretty much the basics of the plot. Now, here's a little backstory. Now, this movie was directed by Peyton Reed, who directed the other two Ant-Man films, and, well, if you've seen from my channel for a while, I've always enjoyed a lot of this Marvel Cinematic Universe films, and for the last couple of years since they've been doing the last few movies that have come out and everything, they've been little hit and miss. There's some that have been really good that have come out, like Spider-Man No Way Home, and I also really enjoyed Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness and all that. And going back to the other Ant-Man films, I did really enjoy I wasn't like really, I liked the first Ant-Man, but I thought it was just, your just standard opener for origin story and everything, or standard, getting the origin set up and everything for the superheroes like we see in the other movies in the cinematic universe. But what really held the first two movies together, I think, really was strong was the comedy, and Paul Rudd was always a great choice to play the character, and he really nails it in all those films. And so with this one coming out, it got me interested because since this is now the beginning of Phase 5 of this Marvel Cinematic Universe, after Phase 4 had some hit and miss films that could have been better, and some that were pretty good that I thought, it seems like now that we're getting really closer to really explore more of the multiverse that's been set up since the last few movies that have been come out. And with this one, it was necessary to bring in King the Conqueror, who was essentially trying to establish more with if you've seen from Loki, the show Loki, it basically sets it up for that, along with some other references that you could probably get from watching like Doctor Strange and stuff like that. But upon seeing the film, I can honestly say that while I thought it was decent, I thought it can be fun at times. I did feel like for a first start of Phase 5, it could have been a whole lot better. Not to say that it was bad or anything, but I felt like this was my least favorite of the trilogy of the Ant-Man films. So to get my pros out of the way, I will say that the cast in this I thought were great. I thought, Paul Rudd is always great as usual playing Ant-Man, along with Evangeline Lilly, who comes back and Michael Douglas and Michelle Pfeiffer. They all do great and have great chemistry together as usual. And also getting to see more of what Scott Lang's daughter Cassie could do in this after her aging in Avengers Endgame really had a lot of promise, especially when they set up how in this film she's trying to essentially be more like her dad and stuff, and wants to make her dad proud. And on paper, I did like what they were trying. I could see what they were going for, because there is aspects to her character that I do like, but at the same time, I felt that I have kind of a pro-con with it, because on the other side, I felt like she could have been developed more. But I thought Catherine Newton did a really great job. I'm a little, wondering why they didn't get the other actress who played in Avengers Endgame, but I still thought Catherine Newton did good. And I've kind of grown on her for some movies now. I will admit, for a long time, I wasn't really too keen on her. Like, I saw her with the first, when I saw her first in Paranormal Activity 4, and then also I wasn't too big on her in Detective Pikachu. But ever since I've seen her in movies like Freaky, I think that she's become a really good, talented actress in her own right. And I thought she really did a good job here. And then the other biggest standout for me the most is definitely Jonathan Majors as King. He is wanting to cause total devastation and stuff. And there's some history that establishes with him and Janet in this that I thought was pretty interesting, the way it played along, and some of the things that they build upon his character in this, when they reveal some of his backstory that we get hints of, I thought was really, compelling, and it kept the story along with it. And it was definitely one of the biggest spots for me that really kept the movie going together. And Jonathan Majors not only was intimidating as hell in scenes, but he really pulls it a lot, especially with certain parts where he gets very emotional as well. And keeps it the most serious villain that it's basically, he does a lot more as far as like damaging stuff compared to, say, what Christian Bale's Gore did in Thor: Love and Thunder. So they at least got that part right compared to that one. But, and this I'll get to later, there's also some things that hold it back from that because it has some things that kind of, take it away in certain scenes that you could be having a lot more better use for it. But to give my other pros, I thought the world that they also set up in this, especially in the quantum realm, was very fantastic with the way we get to see these other creatures that come around. And there's a lot of elements that remind me a lot of Star Wars, and certain extent to Dune as well in certain aspects. As well, mainly from the novel Dune, especially when you get into like some of the colonies and stuff they go to, and like there's even one scene that reminds me straight out of Dune, where I'm not going to go into detail, but it's in a desert type of setting, so to speak. So I thought that was really unique the way that they build upon this world and stuff, and you get to see all these different societies having to eventually having to rebel against what was basically become of their land took from them. I thought that was really unique how it played along with it. And then on top of that, I thought the visual effects were really fantastic in this. That goes with the world that they established. I'll get into some other things that were kind of more mixed on me, or more not so good as far as the CGI, and that has to do with a certain character that's in this film. But for the most part, I thought the visual look of the world itself was pretty unique in its own right. And then, of course, the comedy itself I thought was funny at times when it needed to be. And, that really does play into some of the jokes that do land. Not every joke does land, unfortunately, which kind of holds it back from the other two films, because I thought the other two films still had a lot more humor to it that I laughed more out of. But I still got some laughs here and there with the film. And then there's some other things, too, where they establish some stuff that goes on in the post-credit scenes that really gets me more pumped to what they'll do in the future with this new phase that they've set up. Can't go into spoilers, but with that, because those are definitely some key things to keep an eye on. But other than that, though, I will have to get into, if I have to get into some of my cons now, I have to say that as much as I was getting into seeing how it plays into the setup for the multiverse stuff and with Kang's story and everything, unfortunately, it is backhanded by a lot of the stuff that we could have spent a whole lot more time with. Because on a writing standpoint, it seems like they were more focused on doing a Kang the Conqueror type story and making Ant-Man seem like he takes more of a, not, I want to say a backseat because he's in he's in nearly every scene of the film, but I'm just saying that the focus of trying to build on like him and Cassie's relationship and stuff, and having Cassie become, more like her dad and thing, really could have been a lot, they could have focused a lot more on stuff like that, because this is an Ant-Man movie. And taking some of those things away from it and trying to do other things makes it seem like it's very conflicting at times. And that is definitely something that really holds it back too, because there's also some other things they set up, especially with Bill Murray's character in this, that I think really could have had a lot more potential. And while it is good to see Bill Murray, it really feels like you could really cut his entire scene and you wouldn't really miss anything other than setting up like events that take place later. But I mean, it just really seems like there's a lot of stuff that I wonder if behind the scenes that they had probably a different direction that they were going for, or if there were some reshoots involved, because it almost seems like they were kind of not really too sure if they wanted to make the movie full on serious or keep it very lighthearted like the other two films were. So that is one of the other biggest things too, is that the tone is just all over the place, and this is something I've always criticized with a lot of the MCU films at times, is that you'll be having certain scenes that play out very serious when Kang is killing people and stuff, and then you'll have other scenes like immediately after where someone says a joke or makes it seem like it's very, out of place. That is the other question. That's one of the things that I didn't like with MODOK in this, because not only is the character really annoying at times, but I also thought that CGI they used for his face not only looks very out of place, it's something that I don't really think it really works on well compared to what it looks like in the comic books. Because certain things just don't really translate well when they're on comic book page to go into the silver screen. And so, every time I've seen this character, I just always thought it took me a lot of the serious, even when it's trying to be serious in certain sections, it just feels like it really took me out of the movie for moments like that. And I just really didn't understand really the point of really much bringing back this character from the other films. And so, I mean, I get what they were doing with it, but at the same time, it just really, I didn't feel like it was very earned with the way they play along with the story. And on top of that, there's some other things too, where it seems like now that since they spend most of the film in the quantum world, it was a missed opportunity for them to bring back Lewis from the other films, Scott Lang's friend and stuff that did all the heists and things like that. It would have been cool if they brought him back, but I can see why they didn't want to bring. I can see why they didn't want to bring him back because this is about 85% of it takes place in the quantum world, but you still could have had him like at least at the beginning of the film, or maybe at the end when he comes in at the end or something like that. Just certain things that you could have maybe placed him here and there with, that you could have easily put him in somewhere in the film. One of my other biggest things I have to really, and this doesn't really have necessarily to do with the movie itself if you watch it in 2D, but I did have a problem with the 3D as well, and I felt like compared to the other two films, this one really could have been a lot more better in 3D because as I'm watching it, other than like certain scenes where you could see depth perception and stuff, it's really not worth it in 3D. This is definitely one of those movies that you could just easily watch in 2D and not really notice the difference. Because there's a lot of scenes where it just seems like I'm watching it with sunglasses, and it didn't really feel like I should be watching it in 3D. On top of that, there's some other things too, like I said, with being less of an Ant-Man movie and more about like a mixture of Ant-Man and also the Kang the Conqueror film, it really seemed like they could have really had more emphasis put on the Wasp herself, because it seems like there really wasn't much development with their character this time compared to the other two films, and it seems like this is more of a story that's just more involved with Kang the Conqueror and Janet, and to some extent with Ant-Man and Cassie. But other than that, I mean, Wasp herself seems like she doesn't really have much like of a development, so to speak, in this, like to have much of an arc. And so I think that was really kind of a missed opportunity because since her name is in the title and stuff, you would expect her to have a whole lot more, impact. Well, and the other thing too is that I feel like the stakes could have been a whole lot higher in this, in that things seem a little bit more, well, I don't want to say easy to resolve, but they could have been established a lot more upper with certain things of how much of a threat Kang can really be. Not to say that he's not, but I think that there's certain aspects that if I had a rewrite for the film, not to go into spoilers, but if I had a rewrite for the film, I could have seen something that could have had more of a huge impact with the way the story played out. But I'll leave it at, but I can't go in, but I'll leave it there because you have to really see the movie to kind of see where it goes with that. Because I think it's going to have more of a bigger impact later on with how things will be playing out in the future. Overall, though, I can say that while I didn't necessarily dislike Ant-Man in the Quantumania, I did feel like there's a lot of things that should have been a whole lot better this time compared to the other two films. And for a start of Phase 5, it's 50-50 for me. It's a start to where we're going to see where we are in the MCU as a whole. But at the same time, as an Ant-Man, it's definitely a big step down compared to the other two films. And so with that, I'm going to give the movie an average Joe on the Film Freaks meter. So, for those of you who have also seen Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. And I'll see you later.